Hi, welcome to 5th grade ELA, flipped class recording, Robin Hood wins the Sheriff's Golden Arrow. One of the things that really helps me as I read different books is understanding the time period that that book takes place. And today, the book that we're thinking about is the Robin Hood Wins the Sheriff's Golden Arrow book, and that took place in a time that we know of as the Middle Ages. And you can see that the Middle Ages takes a long period of time. It goes from 500 AD, which is considered the early Middle Ages, to 1500 AD, which is considered the late Middle Ages, and the 1500s is when the Middle Ages were considered to have been over. So some people call it the Middle Ages, but I also want to show you what other folks call it more accurately. Historians like to call Middle Ages medieval times. Sometimes they think that Middle Ages makes you think that it was in the middle of some great period, when it actually was just a long period of time that was known in history as the Dark Age, which is a period of intellectual dormancy, which means that intellectually people and historically were not active. They were not learning new things, they were not inventing new things, they were not discovering new things. That's what intellectual dormancy means. It means kind of asleep in a way. There were many terrible diseases going on. Maybe you've heard of the Black Plague. There were many plagues that were going on that were killing hundreds of thousands of people. And most of the Western European countries were under the control of the Catholic Church. Maybe you've heard of the Crusades. That's a time in when there were several battles that went on in Western European countries and abroad from those countries. And most of the stories that were passed on by word of mouth, because very few people could read or write. And you're actually going to read about one of those stories today when you read about Robin Hood winning the Golden Arrow. And you can imagine why you'd want to make up stories that were like Robin Hood, because there were so many things that were not going well during medieval times. So some of the things that help us think about or recognize medieval times are here on the screen. We think about knights, and here's a knight in his armor. We think about maidens, who dress very maidenly. We think about different kinds of weapons that we don't see today, that you can see some of those here. And we think about people living in castles. So when we think about medieval times or Middle Ages, these are the kind of things that remind us what that was like at that time. So as we read our story and talk about our story, you could be imagining that it's taking place in a castle with people, men wearing knights' clothing and women wearing maidens' clothing and using these kind of weapons. So now let's get ready to come to class prepared to discuss and talk about Robin Hood and the Golden Arrow.